Act 2. Throwaway Kids. Chapter 20. Earth date, 1977. Chicago's Skid Row was located on West Madison Street and was a 12-block stretch of flop houses, gin joints, and battered dreams for those seeking refuge from their demons in a cheap bottle of wine. The transient rooms on the skid were the size of jail cells, and the accommodation's daily rate was $7, including a rusted steel bed, a smelly, pea-stained mattress, and a wire mesh ceiling for ventilation. The wired ceiling indicated that I was sleeping in a bird cage, and a low-watt bulb suspended from the chicken wire was the only light source. When it was quiet, you could hear the residents in their rooms having arguments in their minds and speaking out loud with themselves, which was very concerning. Besides the vagrants, the only other visitors to these hobohemian hotels were the Chicago police, who picked up drunkards who lacked character, and ambulance drivers, who moved the dying and dead to Cook County Hospital and the morgue. There were 3 types of vagrants on Skid Row: the hobo, the tramp, and the bum. The hobo was the guy who worked and wandered, the tramp who dreamt and walked, and the bum who only drank. I wasn't a hobo because I had no intention of working and liked to drink, and therefore saw myself as a mixture of tramp and bum. I still possessed a desire for real life, and if I gave up on my dreams, I'd become a drunken beggar and throwaway kid. Skid Row was attached to my memory as I descended into the bowels of despair. On July 15th, 1966, at approximately 6:15 a.m., I was about to serve the priest's morning mass, and I saw a guy about 200 feet away at the corner of 92nd and Stony Island. Later that next day, the newspapers released a survivor's drawing of Richard Speck's face, which looked like the guy I saw in the corner. I showed Bush the sketch in the papers and said, "I saw Speck on the way to church." And he just laughed and said, "You saw this guy in the corner?"
Yes, I saw him on the corner.
"You said you saw Marilyn Monroe in the grocery store last week, and she's dead."
I was kidding, but I think I saw a speck yesterday.
The newspaper said a hobo killed 8 nurses in a neighborhood just east of Stony Island Avenue 2 days earlier, and his name was Richard Speck. Speck was apprehended at the Star Hotel down on Skid Row. I followed the case in the newspapers because of the insane brutality of the Speck murders and the publicity of the prosecuting attorney, William J. Martin, who had persuaded the jury to declare the death penalty, even though Martin opposed the death penalty. On August 17th, 1977, I woke to find I'd fallen asleep in my car. I would cruise around with wine or beer, and when I got tired, I'd pull over, drink, and pass out. Sleeping in my car was a last line of defense, and if I lost my car, I'd be on foot and knew I'd end up living on Skid Row full time. I reached and turned on the ignition, and the radio blared "In the Ghetto," and the disc jockey did a voiceover. "In the Ghetto" was written by Mac Davis and originally called Vicious Cycle. Elvis made it a major hit in 1969. That's right, fans. The king is dead. Elvis Presley is dead from a drug overdose. I mumbled, "What? Elvis dead?" I leaned back in the seat, looked out the window, and saw a pigeon flying overhead. I blinked and took a snapshot of my mind and dozed off to sleep. Bang! Something hit the side of my car. "Hey, kid! You can't nod off here!" I saw a copper's face glaring down at me. "Okay, but I..." "Don't give me any lip or I'll tow your junk, and you'll go directly to jail without passing go." "Yes, sir." "Did Elvis die?" "Yeah, kid, he's dead. Now move it or lose it." I pulled out, put 2 blocks of space between dirty copper and me, and reparked the car, still thinking about Elvis. I decided to toast him and reached into the back seat for a beer, and I popped the top, raised the warm can, and muttered, "To you, Elvis." The isolation was taking its toll. Sadness and impending doom were constants in my life, and I wished I belonged somewhere. I didn't want to need people, but I'd keep trying to connect with others, hoping they would save me from myself. When I failed, I'd try to fill the void with alcohol and food, which created more mental anguish. and I was walking a thin line between right and wrong. I glanced in the side mirror and saw Dirty Copper walking up the block, so I pulled out again and put another 2 streets between us. While parking, I noticed a window sign on a storefront across the street which read, "Help wanted. Phone solicitors needed." The business name was Renters Assistance Center. I entered the door, which looked like a real estate office, with desks neatly lined up in rows. Behind a counter sat a thin, 40-ish platinum blonde, and a nameplate on her desk said, Ruby. 3 rows back sat a guy who weighed 400 pounds if he weighed an ounce. He shifted slightly in the chair, and it creaked, and I waited for the collapse and felt good that I wasn't as fat as him. Across the aisle from him sat a young lady in a gray business suit, about 21 years old, with brown hair and matching brown eyes. Behind her were 2 offices with glass windows covered with blinds and a hallway leading to a rear door with a thick padlock and a sign which read, "Keep out." I overheard the fat guy introduce himself to the other person on the phone. His name was Fatso Lyman, and the cutie's desk nameplate said, Cherish.
May I help you, young man?
Yes, Miss Ruby. Elvis sends his regards and asks that you remember him kindly.
Really?
She asked, and sat back and folded her arms. Yes, ma'am, I believe he would. Also, I'd like an application for the open position.
Do you know what you're applying for?
She asked. Yes, phone solicitor. What's the pitch?
We help people find apartments. Say, y'all need an apartment?
No, just a job application. Where do you hail from, Ruby?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville is a nice town, Ruby.
Thank you kindly,
She replied, smiling. Ruby opened a drawer, took out a pad, peeled off an application, handed it to me, then hunted in a drawer for a pencil. The blinds on a rear office window moved, while a speaker hanging from the ceiling crackled, and Ruby eyeballed the speaker behind us. So, what's the phone pitch? I asked. She began to tell me when her phone rang, raised her finger, and winked.
Renters Assistance Center, this is Ruby. May I help you? Yes, that apartment is available and the landlord wants it rented. And all it costs for the landlord's listing is $25. Please come in and ask for Ruby, Tennessee.
She hung up the phone, waved for my job application, and studied it.
It says you worked as a phone solicitor?
Ruby asked. Yes, ma'am.
Why did you leave?
She asked. They didn't pay me my commissions, so I quit. A short, square guy opened the door from a back office, nodded before leaving, strolled to the fat guy's desk, pretended to shuffle a few papers, and listened to what came next between Ruby and me. Fatso called him Bob. I'd like a job, I said, looking at Bob. I'm a phone pitcher, and I've worked in other boiler rooms. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pitch the phones now for nothing, and if I don't produce, don't pay me. But if I'm successful, give me a job. The muscled guy pointed to the open desk and said, Go ahead, have a seat. There's a pitch right next to the phone. The phone rang. Then I picked it up and read the same pitch that Ruby recited and promised the caller I would give him a landlord with apartments available for rent. I told him to ask for Cody Jarrett, and the caller came into the office and asked for me. After a while, another one came in, and then 2 more. I had 5 customers sign up by the end of the day, earning the company $125. Around closing time, Bob said, I have someone who wants to meet you. I followed him to a back office, and standing in front of me was a tall, thin guy with hair so black it was dyed. Strands of gray on his head indicated he'd either overpaid the barber or so cheap he'd done it himself. Otherwise, he was impeccable. Purple silk shirt, black pants, and shoes, with a gold chain visible through his open collar. He looked me up and down and handed me $25. I need $200 a week, I said. Just wondering how you brought in 5 customers. You get lucky? He asked. Nope. I'm Cody Jarrett. And you are? I'm Alex. How did you do it? I told the callers that we have more than one apartment and gave them 5 landlords to contact. Picking up the section, I showed him the other available apartments in the paper. I just took the landlord's number out of the paper near where they want to live and added it to the apartment they called about. Alex looked confused, but his happy meter swung far to the right. Who told you to do that? He asked. No one. Just makes sense, right? Right, he said, thinking slowly. Any other things you would do? Yes, there is one thing. You should advertise all these apartment listings under your company name Renter's Assistance Center. Dominate the page in big black letters and raise your price to $50. Take all these apartments and advertise them by vicinities only, according to what city neighborhood or suburb they're located. Why? He asked. It's a matter of supply and demand. All these apartments are the supply, and the people needing them are the demand. Just then, the phone rang. I walked over, punched the blinking button, and answered enthusiastically, Renter's Assistance Center, may we help you now? Hold on, please, I'll check. I punched the hold button. He's asking about the apartment near 63rd and Western. It's taken, Alex said. I repunched the phone button. It's available right now, and we also have many more in your area right now. This is what we do at the Renter's Assistance Center. We supply you with a list of multiple apartments right now. It only costs $50. We suggest you consider several in your price range to make a proper decision. Should we expect you to come to our office right now? Wonderful. Please ask for Cody Jarrett. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Goodbye. I hung up the phone and announced, That's it. So what happens when we don't have multiple listings right now? Alex asked. I picked up the paper and scanned it. You have at least 5 apartments advertised in that area alone. Write these 5 apartments down on a nice piece of paper, including the landlord's numbers, and give it to them. Only change the vicinity by 1 street. And what happens when the landlords see us advertising their apartments? Alex asked. Change the streets by 1 block. They won't know and won't care because you're helping them rent their apartments. What college did you graduate from, kid? Bob asked. Stony Island University, I said. Never heard of it, Bob smirked. Alex broke into a huge smile. It's beautiful, kid. Very creative. Last question. How did you see this? I was looking for an apartment a while back and sat through a similar pitch from another company. And if I had received a few more landlord listings, I would have paid them, but for only 1. Right now, no way. Chapter 21. Cherish. Cherish, the beauty with the brown eyes, wanted a career in real estate.
I just love helping people find a new home,
She told me as she introduced herself. Happy pictures of families standing in front of new apartments cluttered her desk, along with 2 phones. And later that day, when things were quiet, Cherish called landlords to help her clients find homes. The desk pictures reminded her of her caring dedication and dream of a career in real estate. The next day, I changed the pitch a little more and said, Ask for Cody Jarrett, a trusted name in real estate. And Cherish giggled and shook her head. I was enjoying the attention she was giving me because I was a nobody. When Alex paid me the $200 on Saturday, I asked him, What's with Cherish? She doesn't know yet, but we're going out next weekend to discuss her real estate career. She's innocent and has quite a body, huh? I have special plans for Cherish, he said with a wink. As I walked out the door, I looked at Cherish and decided she would not be my concern because I was rich and thirsty. I returned to the office on the following Tuesday, and Cherish beamed when I entered.
Good morning, Cody. Where have you been?
She asked. Alex heard my voice and waved me into his office, and he was flustered. Kid, we did as you said, but everyone's complaining because the apartments are all rented. They shouldn't be, I said as I walked to his desk and scanned the newspapers. Here's your problem, I said, pointing to the date. This paper is a week old. Last week's news is old, and so are last week's apartments. Run new ads every 3 days, and you'll be fine. I don't get it, he said. Come on, Alex. Last week's apartments are rented, so you need new listings. Today's paper is fresh. The apartments are brand new. Suddenly, the lights in the attic came on. Oh, I get it, he said. How's Cherish doing? Is she making sales? I asked. Of course, and I'm working on her. And Friday, we're going out for a snack, and she's the snack. Why don't you start working, kid? I'll pay you more. Tell me how much you want, and maybe I can keep improving. Peering out between the blinds, I said, all I want is $200 a week. See you tomorrow. The next day, Fatso and Bob were waiting for me. Alex wants you to meet someone, Fatso said. I was getting muscled and didn't argue. On the way out, Cherish cupped her phone and asked me,
Do you want to have lunch?
I was feeling confident and said without thinking, love you. Love to. And then turned red. She was shocked and lowered her head and smiled. Alex was waiting behind the wheel of the car when we came out of the office. He lowered the front passenger window and looked at me from behind his sunglasses. Cody, how you doing? I have a friend and told him about your special talent. Special talent? I asked. Seeing things and making plays, he said. Not interested. Cody, this could be a good thing. At least hear him out. Sorry, Alex. Find someone else. Fatso spoke up. You got no choice, kid, because our friend is waiting down the street. The rear door opened, and Fatso nodded at me to get in the car. I wedged between him and Bob, and the rearview mirror was directly in front of me. After we pulled out, I saw a black sedan pull out behind us and make a U-turn under the street we were driving on. Alex, Cherish just asked the kid to go to lunch, Fatso said. What? Alex said, glaring at me through the rearview mirror. Snitches belong in ditches, Fatso, Bob added. I'm going to take your girlfriend, Alex, I said. Do your karma a favor and fire her. Tell her to move along. Believe me, kid, my good karma left a long time ago. We're going on our big date. If it's okay with you. It was not okay, but I suspended the topic because I had another problem. As our car glided west, I saw the black car behind us in the rearview mirror. It was a tail car, another hood, or the law, but it was undoubtedly terrible news. While I pondered the implications, Bob asked, What this karma thing? Mystics believe your future is decided by how we live today. If Alex does something lousy today, something horrific will happen to Alex. If Alex harms Cherish and interferes with her destiny, the universe will hurt him and interfere with his destiny, and it's not going to be pleasant. We rolled down Cicero past the used car lots as Bob mulled over what I said. Your father a priest, kid? Fatso asked. Priests don't have kids, I replied. I bet they play around, though, Fatso said with a snicker. Probably, I added. I could see Alex's face in the rearview mirror through his shades, and he was taking in every word as his gaze alternated between me and the street ahead. If this sit-down doesn't go good, kid, you may not be around much longer, he growled. So I wouldn't be making waves. We walked into a restaurant where a 50-year-old criminal was sitting at a table with his eyes on the door. He had short black hair and wore tinted blue sunglasses, a white shirt, and a beige suede jacket. He looked me up and down and nodded to the chair. My name is Nick. Why am I here? I asked. I wanted to meet the brain who figured this apartment twist, and I wanted to thank you and see if I could do anything for you. Nothing, I said. You sure, kid? I could do a lot for someone with your skills. Like what? I asked. $1,000 a week, but you'd have to earn it. What would you want? I asked. You know, lay off the booze, work every day, and help out. I'll work for a while, I said, and then I'm gone, like water down a drain. Nick was dumbfounded. Who's not interested in $1,000 a week? Why not you? I'm a nobody, just a guy stopping in for a short visit, and I've already been in a cell, and I'm not going back. Oh yeah? Where'd you do time? He asked. I was incarcerated in the bedroom when I was a kid. Everybody looked at each other, figured out it was a joke, and laughed. He's sweet on that broad Cherish, Alex said, and she's my girlfriend, and we're going out Friday night. Again, laughter around the table. Don't talk about her that way, Alex. I don't like it, I warned. What did you say to me? Alex snarled. Nick silenced Alex with a glare. Let's take a walk, kid. The daylight was blinding after the dark interior restaurant. I looked around for the cop car. After meeting Nick, I'd convinced myself the black vehicle had to be law enforcement. A high extension ladder stretched on a brick building that reached the street curb, and I walked casually toward it, looking around for the black car. Nick was beside me, but stopped cold at the ladder, then made a right out to the curb with his back towards me. I thought to myself. I stepped back directly under the ladder, and as he turned, I bent over to tighten my shoelaces. As Nick approached, I stood and faced him. Listen, kid, this is an easy thing since you showed up. It's a boost to what we do, and I'm willing to cut you in on the other things. I'm making more cash, so why not, right? I stood my ground, which was under the ladder. The guy washing the windows yelled down at me. Get out from under the ladder! I glanced up and said, Nick, here's an idea. Tell Alex to back off Cherish, and you'll make so much money you won't be able to spend it all. Why is it so important? He asked. She's my price. I appreciate the 1,000, but I'll settle for 200 a week and pitch the phones if you grant this favor. He looked up at the guy at the top of the ladder and said, Kid, they said you're weird, and you are weird. He thought for a second, took my arm, and brought me out from under the ladder. Okay, have it your way, kid. I'll have Alex back off. A few days later, an investigator from the Attorney General's Consumer Fraud Division walked up to me and flashed his badge. He was about 6'3" and wore a blue suit, white shirt, tie, and black wingtip shoes. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Do I have a choice? I asked. No, he said. We walked to the coffee shop on the corner without saying a word to each other, and my mind and heart were racing. We ordered coffee, and the investigator stated, You need to find another job. I can't right now. He looked at me with steely blue eyes, picked up a spoon, and continued as he stirred his brew. These guys are bad. Nick's a career criminal from Michigan, and we're putting together a RICO case on him. A couple of days ago, you discouraged one of our investigators from signing up with the Renter's Assistance Center. He was a guy looking for an apartment for his mother. Why did you do that? I shrugged. We must not have had the right apartment. Did you know he was an investigator? I nodded yes. How? He asked. I took a sip of coffee and said, The guy was wearing an ugly Hawaiian shirt, blue jeans, and black shoes like yours. His shirt side was bulging out, so he was carrying a sidearm. Only cops carry sidearms. And he asked more questions about the rental agency than specific apartments. And between the questions, the gun, and the shoes, he was a cop. So, when are you guys going to shut Nick down? It's not that easy, and our investigation is ongoing. Nick is involved in other things and with other people, and we're gathering information. That's nice to hear, but there's a person who works there, and I must make sure she doesn't get hurt. So I have to stick around. Unless, of course, you get her out, and then I'll leave too. That would be Cherish? I nodded yes. We can't move in right now, he said. Then I stay until she's out. Why don't you just tell her the truth and you both quit? He asked. It's not that easy, I replied. He missed the irony. Tell Cherish the truth. That's not hard. All you do is, look, I freeze up. I've never got the girl I wanted, and I'm confused. I don't know how to talk to girls, and she's beautiful, and I say stupid things, so you do it. Tell her the truth or shut him down. How will you help her if you can't talk to her? You think Cherish would make a good school teacher? I asked. I don't know her. I can't say, he said with a puzzled look. I think she'd be an excellent school teacher, I said. You could go to jail, he said assuredly. Maybe you should help us from the inside and be a part of our team. You want me to snitch? Do I get a tin star too? I can pin it on my dirty shirt. Think about it, he said. No thanks, I said. But thanks for the coffee, sir. Give me 5 minutes before you leave. I don't mind a dirty copper, but you're a clean copper, and I got a reputation to uphold. A week later, Alex was in a lousy mood because of the intervention over Cherish and ripped into me. Hey, kid, Are you going to keep daydreaming or pitch some phones? The phones aren't ringing. Business is bad, I said. Maybe it's time for you to expand to another city, like New York or Washington, D.C. Just a thought. Here's a thought, he said. Answer some phones when they ring. I'm going to pick up Nick and be back soon. After Alex left, I decided to visit Judy Jolly, who lived 2 doors from the office. Judy was small, thin, and about 60 years old with dyed blonde hair. We met at the restaurant across the street when we were both waiting in line to place an order, and she spoke about her husband, who had passed away the previous year. Judy's husband was from Paris and had migrated to the States after World War II and smoked constantly, drove a taxi, and died of cancer. Judy had an old-world approach that was enduring. I hurried to her building and rang her buzzer. When I identified myself as the speaker, she buzzed me in, and I climbed the flight of stairs to her flat. Hi, Judy. Can I get what we talked about yesterday? Her eyes softened.
I hope this works out for you, Cody.
She went into another room and returned with a zippered canvas bag. Thank you, Judy. This is wonderful. I returned to the office, grabbed an ice pick off the back counter, slipped the sharp edge into the middle of Alex's doorknob, wiggled, and heard the lock pop. Sometime later, Nick, Fatso, Bob, and Alex walked through the front door, and Nick headed for the office. After a few moments, Bob asked,
You remember when you were talking about this karma thing? Would nice things count too?
Yes, I said. If you do something good will happen to you. Negative follows negative, and positive follows positive. That's a bunch of nonsense, Alex said. It's my question, not yours, Bob snapped. He's getting in your head, Alex said. All you talk about is karma this and karma that, and it's not productive, seeing our line of business. Bob warned Alex.
So, you telling me not to think? Maybe you think I'm stupid? See what you started, kid?
Fatso said. No, I'm the one who started it, and I'm going to finish it, Bob said. Easy, Bob. I meant no disrespect, Alex said.
Go ahead, kid, Bob snarled.
Okay, I said, smiling at Alex. Say some guys stick up a bank and they get caught. They're locked up inside a federal pen for the next 20 years. They don't get locked up if they don't rob the bank. It's that simple. And if they don't get caught, they're on easy street for the next 20 years, Alex said. Could happen, but robbing a bank is 10-dimensional. Meaning what? Bob asked. It means the robbers unlock a door of another dimension of sight, sound, and mind, with options beyond the obvious. It is the middle ground between light and dark, science and superstition. Unknown movement from spiritual sources could alter the robbery's success, and the robbers could die. Oh, enough. We can't be engaging this kind of negative thinking, Alex said firmly. Sadly, and shaking his head, Bob whispered to me, Nick's Aunt Rachel died, and he feels awful. From the next room came a scream. Oh, God! The boys scrambled to their feet and ran to Nick's office, followed by a massive roar of laughter. Nick had wedged himself between the desk and the wall, and we could only see him from the eyes up. And on top of the desk was a crouching, hissing black cat with yellow eyes. Slipping by the boys, I said, This old lady down the street had a bunch of cats, and I figured we should get one to take care of the mice we've been seeing. I reached down and scooped up the cat and held it out. Isn't she cute, Nick? Get that thing away from me! Nick growled as he rose from behind his desk. Bob, Fatso, and Alex were still howling as I stroked her back, and the cat relaxed. Nick took a deep breath and composed himself. Thanks for the solution to the rodents, but I hate black cats. Nick, mice are brilliant, and there's a leader mouse that trains all the other mice. This cat will catch the leader mouse and the other mice too. Get it out of here now! Nick screamed. While walking back to Judy Jolly's to return the cat, I told myself that I was happy that Cherish and I were together. And reality screamed, You and Cherish are not together! Time went by, and I enjoyed working with Cherish. She had a stabilizing effect that made life meaningful, although I always said stupid things and felt insecure. I knew that Cherish could never be interested in me, but I was powerless and loved her because she asked me to go to lunch, and I wasn't even hungry. It was crazy because my feelings for Cherish overwhelmed the reality that I was the inventor of a serious hustle, and any day we could all be arrested, including Cherish. Meanwhile, several people came into the office a day and asked for Cody Jarrett, and my stature with Nick was rising because he was making more money. However, Alex was angry over my intercession for Cherish and felt disrespected, and he was right. I didn't want to get killed, but I couldn't back off. Then, out of nowhere, Cherish asked,
Cody, do you think I would be a good manager? Alex wants to discuss the position with me.
"Screw me," I thought. Suddenly, I felt urgency because Cherish was meeting with Alex, and I could not let that happen. But if I told her the truth, I may never see her again, and we wouldn't be together. "You and Cherish aren't together," I reminded myself. "No, you can't be a manager. You're a nobody," I said. Her face wrinkled.
It bothers me that you would say it like that.
"You're right," I said. "I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that your talents far exceed working here. Can I give you a ride home from work tonight and we can discuss this?"
Okay.
she said. After the office closed, we drove in the rain towards her house. "Cherish, do you know most people aren't finding apartments?" She sighed.
Our customer service is bad, so Alex wants me to manage the firm.
I almost drove off the road. "Cherish, that is not a good idea. I think you should quit and find another place of employment."
Why would I want to work somewhere else? I'm building a real estate career.
I took a deep breath. "Cherish, the business is a fake, and everyone knows it but you. I'm not sure what goes on behind the padlocked door, but I have suspicions."
What do you mean?
she asked. "I think the landlord business was a front, and the deliveries are moving in and out after hours. Could be hijacking." She sat in stunned silence and then said,
I have noticed inconsistencies. And there have been many angry clients wanting refunds since you started working with the firm.
I watched her thinking it through, and the next question was inevitable.
So why are you still here?
she asked. I stumbled through my answer. "At first, I needed a job, but saw that Alex had eyes for you, so I hung around to ensure you were safe. Then an investigator appeared from the Attorney General's office, and we spoke about you, and he's been no help because of an ongoing investigation." I took a deep breath. "It will be over soon, and we'll enjoy our lives together. Will you marry me?"
No!
she said impulsively and adamantly. She looked very beleaguered, then asked,
You stayed to protect me? Why?
"Because you found apartments for all those people and have a generous heart. I will be sure it stays intact."
Cody, why would you do that?
It's hard to explain. But I promised that if I saw someone who needed help, I would intercede. But I try not to do so. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? You'd make a great grammar school teacher. My real name is Jimmy. I'm hungry now. Let's get lunch.
Cody, or Jimmy, this is hard for me to say, and please don't take this wrong. But sometimes you talk to yourself, and it seems you hear voices in your head. I have a cousin who has a similar issue, and she sees a psychiatrist. Have you ever considered therapy?
I sighed deeply and said, "No! Cherish, you must quit. Don't show up for work tomorrow. Alex will hurt you eventually. And if you come to work, I'll kill him just because you came to work."
I wasn't expecting this,
she said, appearing terrified. I screamed, "Ah!" and pounded my fists on the steering wheel for about 10 seconds, and then heard the windshield wiper and saw the soft rain being pushed from side to side on the front car window. "Cherish, you are a victim in a mirage that appears real, but it's not real. It's like a television show, and you are a cast member, and the police will make a raid in tomorrow's episode. You must quit, and go quickly, and don't look back." I took a card from my wallet and handed it to her. The card read, Report fraud. Attorney General's Consumer Fraud Division. Please contact the office, and they will verify what I'm saying. The last time I saw Cherish, she faced the car under the porch light and waved slightly, then disappeared like a ghost in the fog. Chapter 22. Ask for help. I gave myself the usual line about starting a new life and getting a real job, but I had doubts. I'd never been able to stick to anything, but this time I had to try. Maybe if I got a real job, Cherish would be interested in me. I went job hunting anyway. I filled out applications, but had to leave the prior employment sections blank. Once, during an interview, a personnel secretary suggested I just write down that I'd been in jail. She tried to be helpful. They had a unique program for ex-convicts. But I haven't been in prison, I told her.
What have you been doing since high school?
She asked. A little this and a little that. Closing her file, she smiled and said,
We'll let you know.
So I went back to day labor, working for minimum wage, but it wasn't enough, and after food and housing, it was gone. No one in the world had any use for me, so my drinking got worse, and at least once a week, I'd go out and spend money I didn't have, and the following day, I'd be crazy with remorse over what I'd done. I decided to apply at the factory where my father was a supervisor. He had gotten Joe a job, so why not me? I walked into the plant's employment office, quietly told the receptionist my name, and asked if they were hiring. She was pleasant and called upstairs to my father. It was a short conversation, then whispered through the personnel window.
Your father says we're not hiring. I'm sorry.
From the look on her face, I could tell she was embarrassed, and I felt like a fool for letting myself be blindsided. After 24 years of the same treatment, I should have known nothing would change. The rejection and humiliation were constant and devastating, yet I always went back for more. It was a severe mental disorder. I grabbed a pint of wine to drown in and walked through the door of Skid Row Motel. The desk guy said someone had called asking for me, and that he would call back at 2 o'clock. I was hopeful it was good news about one of the applications I had filled out and waited in the lobby. Hold on, the lobby attendant said. Hello? I asked. It's Alex. If you're interested, we've landed and set up a shop in Washington, D.C., and you're welcome to join us. Good to hear. Thanks for calling, I said. I hung up the phone and thought of all the applications. Only the crooks wanted me. The world was closing in, and despite my brave words to Cherish, I could only think about running. If I disappeared from Chicago and put together just one big score, maybe I could get something legitimate started, and she would want me again. Cherish never wanted you, I screamed at myself. So off I went, driving east with no plan in mind beyond getting away from my life. I'd never been out of Chicago before, and it felt like I was on vacation. But then reality and fear would interrupt the daydream, followed by the belief that I was going to prison. About 50 miles outside Washington, D.C., I picked up a D.C. newspaper, and like a homing pigeon, I zeroed in on the classifieds, and there was an ad for a service called Apartment Finders. My life of crime awaited, and just outside D.C., I called the number from a payphone. Hello, Apartment Finders. May I help you? I want to speak with the big man, Bob. Cody, where are you? Are you stopping by? Yes, be there later today, and I need a place to live. Not a problem. Just this morning, Fatso arranged an account at a hotel. It's on 3rd Avenue, and I'll make sure you can check in this afternoon. Is Nick around? I asked. He's in Detroit, taking care of a few things. He said you might show, and I was to take good care of you. When's he coming back? Maybe next week. Tell him I'm committed. Sure, kid. He'll be happy to hear it. I could feel the blood flowing through my veins again as I'd come back from the dead, and they had lunch waiting, and everyone was there except Nick in Detroit. Bob even brought out a big cake with lit candles, and it felt good to be wanted, even by a crew of bad guys. We didn't know when your birthday was, so we decided to celebrate it today. He started singing, and after a few choruses of Happy Birthday to You, Alex asked what the temperature was in Chicago. Cool. Real cool. The cops have moved on to something else. That's good. He reached into his pocket and brought out an envelope. Here's 5,000. I don't need this much. Cody, when you're committed, you take the money. The phone rang and Bob answered it. Cody, pick up line 3. Hello, apartment finders, I said. How may I help you? Morning, kid. How's it going? It's going, Nick. How are you? I'm taking care of a few things, but I'll be there soon. Did you get your money? Yes, thanks. It will help. Kid, you're mumbling. We're family now. Let's hear some enthusiasm and pitch some phones. I felt like throwing up. Sure, okay. Why not, Nick? It's this or nothing, I thought to myself. Alex, I'm going out to walk off this cake, I said. I'll be back in an hour. I walked around for a while and then sat in a diner, thinking about what I had just done. I detested Nick to the point of sickness. Yet I feared the future. I was so low, scared, and sad about losing Cherish. Stop! You were never with Cherish! I yelled at myself. I placed my face in my hands to hide the tears rolling down my cheeks, entered a past memory, and remembered Miss Hope saying something about being surrounded by something.
More coffee, young man?
The waitress asked. Yes, please, I mumbled.
Girlfriend problems? My son has had plenty. Would you like to tell me? Sometimes it makes a person feel better.
Not a girlfriend problem. Not really. I need a job.
What do you do?
Nothing. That's the problem. I have no training, but I could be a sales guy because people like me.
Now, isn't that something? See the man sitting over in that booth?
Yes, I said.
He's a regular, and we're friends. He's the sales director at Park Lawn Cemetery and has an idea to sell funeral plots to people who don't need them, like young married couples who have their whole life ahead of them. You know the slogan, 6 feet deep? Well, Harvey's selling 12 feet deep.
I jumped right in. Or bunk beds for the dead. She laughed.
Oh, that's a good one.
Are they legit? I asked.
Of course it's legit. Where are you from anyway? Most people in this area are buried in Park Lawn Cemetery, and he's looking for a salesperson. I'll talk to him right now. He takes burying people seriously, so leave the bunk beds for the dead joke out of your interview. I'll be right back.
I sat breathless as she talked with him, and after a minute, the man waved me over. Hello, I'm Jimmy Heaney, I said, shaking his hand. I'm Harvey. Wanda says you're a salesman. Is that true? Have you ever had formal training? My heart sank. No, but people like me. Jim, you sound as if you're from the Midwest. Chicago, maybe? Yes, I said. Cubs or White Sox, Jim? Both, sir. But there's nothing like the bleachers at Wrigley Field. Why can't the Cubs win? Harvey asked. Day ball, hot weather, the players wear out every year. Are you a Cubs fan, sir? Harvey nodded and added, I like to see a losing team win. I smiled. Something good was happening here, so I kept going. What brings you to Washington, Jim? I looked at Harvey, then out the window and back to Harvey, and laid out the whole story, start to finish. I need a job, Harvey. Are you going to jail? Harvey asked. I don't think so. Jim, consider yourself hired, Harvey said. You can start when all your ties to Nick are behind you. Really? I asked. I feel good about this, and we're Cubs fans. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a business card, and handed it to me. It read, Park Lawn Cemetery, Harvey Geller. Your training begins Tuesday morning. Thank you, I said. I won't let you down. See you Tuesday, Harvey. I was euphoric because I had just gotten a job. I wished I'd gone to the diner first and wouldn't have had to return Nick's money. A couple of things were nagging me, however. The office was open, but Nick was supposed to be in Detroit, and that didn't make sense because Nick was never far from his money. And how did Nick know the exact moment to call the office and find me there? Finally, I knew if I gave Alex the $5,000, he'd steal it from Nick and claim I ripped him off. I thought about the buildings on the block. All were low-rises except one on the corner across the street, and it was 4 stories high, with windows facing the road in front of the apartment finder's office. I stood down the block to see those windows. It was getting dark, and the lights in the building popped on one by one. I scanned the front windows facing apartment finders, and all the lights were out. After a few minutes, a light on the top floor went on, and I saw Nick standing in the window with a pair of binoculars, scanning the office below him. I walked to the office door, turned to face him, and mouthed, "I quit." The binoculars lurched and then dropped to his chest as he stared at me. I disappeared from the window, and the phone rang as I walked into the office. "Here he is now." Alex handed me the phone. "It's Nick."
"What's wrong, kid? Was the envelope light or what?"
"Nope. But it's over for me, Nick. Alex has the 5,000.
"So be it."
He snarled. And then his phone dropped, and I heard from the office doorway, "You're under arrest! Don't move! Don't anybody move!" Chapter 23. Jailbird. I stood in disbelief and shook my head to clear it. The marshals read us our rights, and we were transported to the D.C. lockup and placed in a holding cell with 20 other guys. Eventually, an officer came by and screamed, "Listen up, parakeets! You'll be arraigned at a bond hearing in the morning." It was a long night, and a few times I dozed off, but kept waking up to angry threats coming out of the surrounding cells. The fear of tomorrow's court date short-circuited my energy, and I fell asleep and dreamt. I wore a black and white prison suit and cap, and dangling leg chains created shuffled walking on an angle. 2 burly guards were at my sides and hustled me through a gray cinder-block hallway where the doors opened. Entering the room, I saw jurists staring at me from a baseball dugout, and jeering fans packed the bleacher section of the courtroom like Romans waiting for the Christians to be devoured by lions. The oak-paneled courtroom held a long black table, and the umpire sat on a golden throne 15 feet in the air. The bailiff announced, "Court is in session, all rise." "The government may proceed," the umpire said. "Cody Jarrett has been charged with renting fake apartments, not caring about himself, and daydreaming about Cherish. We ask that Cody Jarrett receive a life sentence for his offenses."
Boo!
The fans in the bleachers yelled. The umpire slammed the black gavel and yelled, "Not today and not in my courtroom. Another outburst and I'll throw you all out of the game. Counselor, can you give me a reason why my courtroom is full of people today?" "Your umpire, it seems they are folks who are curious to see how Heaney homers out of this nightmare." "Very well. Is his dream girl present? I would like to meet her," the umpire asked slyly. The prosecutor motioned to a side door, and Cherish strode in, wearing a tight blue Chicago Cubs uniform, and sat down next to me. "You look lovely today," the umpire said, winking at Cherish. The crowd let out a "Boo!" and the umpire cleared his throat. "May I say something, your umpire?" I asked. "Very well, young man." Poor Miss Hope was my grammar school teacher, and I loved Miss Hope very much. I heard sniffling behind me from the bleachers. Some were blowing their noses, and others were wiping tears from their eyes. The umpire nodded. "However sad your life story is, I must take the government's request for a life sentence under advisement. Cherish, what do you think of Cody?" the umpire asked.
I don't know why he does what he does. Popcorn, your umpire?
"No, thank you, Cherish. I've already had breakfast. But I am very available for lunch."
Boo!
The fans hissed.
"Settle down! Settle down!"
The umpire yelled. After a brief pause, the umpire asked,
"Cody, how is it you came to be in the apartment finder's office?"
"I was looking for an apartment so Cherish and I could keep staying alive, because she's 3 times a lady. Staying alive, and give me a home where the buffalo roam." I glanced down at Cherish. She had placed her head in her hands and shook it in exasperation.
"Anything else you would like to add, Cherish?" the umpire asked.
I believe he needs lots of medication that will be invented in the future, and I have the fastest car ever in the parking lot. May I drive away from Cody's daydream?
"That's just mean, Cherish." Can I go with you? I asked.
Cody, you want me to save you, and you must save yourself. Take care of yourself first, and you'll get the girl you want. Toodaloo!
But I want to sign autographs. Please don't leave. And we were born to run. Oh, oh, oh.
No, I must repeat. Cherish has just one seat. Oh, oh, oh.
The umpire turned to the prosecutor. I see the government's claim that Cody is guilty of daydreaming and has a sour singing voice, too. But your voice is wonderful, Cherish. Yes, all day and every day. Let's lock him up and throw away the key for bad singing, too, the prosecutor said. Are there injured parties locally that would substantiate your charge? No, your umpire, not at this time. I move that the charges be dismissed, I yelled. What does the government say to his request? We will not dismiss the charges, and again ask the court that he be in prison for 1,000 years or death. Boo!
Boo!
The fans roared. I kept going. Your umpire, I request my constitutional right to a fair and speedy trial. The umpire smiled, sat back in his chair, and asked, Did poor Miss Hope also teach you to talk like a lawyer?
No, I did not.
I was stunned and recognized the voice. I saw Miss Hope striding out of the baseball dugout towards my table and dressed as the Chicago Cubs manager. You're going to get tossed out of this courtroom now, your umpire, I screamed, and the fans cheered as the Chicago Cubs had finally won a World Series. The umpire was shocked and asked again, Why are the bleachers filled in my courtroom today?
The fans,
Miss Hope said.
all represent divine providence for other children who have experienced what Jim has encountered.
May I call Cherish as a character witness? Proceed, the umpire said, yawning. Cherish, please tell the jury what Jim did for you. I looked at Cherish. She was holding a stick of pink cotton candy, tearing it with her fingers, and stated nonchalantly,
Cody saved me from some naughty men. I don't know why he did it or would care about me, but he did. And my life would have been very different if he didn't care.
That's what I'm talking about, your umpire!
someone screamed from the bleachers.
Order, everyone!
Cody, can you provide the answer to why? I paused and said, I'm pleading my Fifth Amendment right not to self-humiliate. And I'll tell you in Chapter 25, your umpire. Very well, the umpire said. Is there anything else, Miss Hope? She turned to me and wagged her finger and said,
You are Jim Heaney, and not Cody Jarrett. And your umpire, I would state for the record that there are pads of paper and pens in the church pews that the jurists are sitting in, and I would ask that they write down Jim Heaney's sentence from this day forward.
Very well. I instruct the fans to write down the verdict on the charges today in this courtroom. After some scribbling, the umpire asked, Are the fans ready to sentence Jim Heaney?
We are your umpire.
The first fan held up a paper, followed by another, and when all the fans had held up their findings, the verdicts read, You must learn how to help yourself before you can help others. Clang! I woke to a cell door slamming shut, and after a nasty breakfast, stood in a large room like the one in my dream with a public defender and judge. The prosecutor requested that the bond be denied because I was considered a flight risk, and the judge rejected the prosecutor's request because the crime didn't fit the amount of bail he was asking for. The judge then set a bond hearing for Monday. It was all very low-key, and they called me Jim Heaney. I realized what was happening. Nick was the one they wanted, and since they hadn't caught him, they didn't have a case. They'd drop the charges on Monday if they didn't arrest Nick over the weekend. I was placed in solitary, and the door closed behind me. The cell had a steel bed, sink, toilet, and sliding steel bar door, protecting me from the main population. I felt dizzy and lay on the bed and closed my eyes to stop the airless room from spinning. I broke into a cold sweat as the cell seemed to shrink in size, and I began to panic. My mind darted back to the first day working at the Renters Assistance Center and reflected on Cherish and the previous 6 months. I felt the universe wanted Cherish to be protected. It was real, but I had gone way over the line. I hated myself for hurting all those people. Yet Nick's escape guaranteed my release, and I had a legitimate job starting Tuesday. I reflected on the disease of alcoholism and its trauma and consequences that pass from one generation to the next, and decided I had a choice in this matter. I did not have to follow in my ancestors' footsteps, and the drinking would stop, and the results of this one self-esteemed action will be far-reaching. On Monday, we filed into the courtroom. "Do you wish to proceed with the case?" the judge asked. "No, Your Honor. The government wishes to drop the charges, and Jim Heaney is free to go." Chapter 24. Divine Intervention. Selling burial plots to people who hadn't died was the hardest thing to promote, but I was getting good at it. I had 2 more clients to meet when I decided to stop for a cup of coffee, and on the way out of the coffee shop, I heard a voice from the past speaking behind me. "Turn around real slow, Jimmy," Alex said, pressing a .45 into my gut. "Put the gun down. You might accidentally shoot me, and I knew we would have a sit-down. There's no problem." "So, what did you tell the feds?" Alex asked. "Nothing. I didn't know anything about the DC operation. All they did was lock me up for the weekend. They couldn't find Nick, so they let me walk. Nick's not seeing it that way. He thinks you spilled, and I'm going to kill you. And I'm happy." We pulled into a roadside motel off the Beltway, and Nick, Bob, and Fatso sat at a table with a bottle of whiskey. Life on the run disagreed with them, and in the middle of the bed was a roll of plastic sheeting. "One last drink, kid?" Nick asked. "I quit." Nick glanced at Alex and asked, "Where's the 5,000, kid?" "Really?" I asked Alex. "I gave it to Alex right before we got busted." "Kill him. Wrap him in the plastic and put him in the trunk." "Hold up, Nick. Did you know I'm working at a cemetery?" "I heard," he said. "Your Aunt Rachel paid me a visit." Nick lurched back in his chair. "I was in the freezer, and she was sitting in a rocking chair, and she asked that I give you a message." Nick's face became white, and a bead of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Aunt Rachel says she loves you, but if you kill me, she won't be able to intercede for you anymore, and your remaining years will be long and tortured." "What did she look like?" Bob asked. "What kind of stupid question is that?" Alex snarled. "Just wondering. Geesh, Alex, can't a guy ask a question?" "She wore a black dress, and a rosary draped her hands. Was she buried recently, Nick?" "About 6 months ago," Nick stammered. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. The highlight reel of the restaurant ladder and the cat superstition played in his mind. I glanced down, and his fingers extended onto the table, and I reached over and placed my prints on the mirror and the desk. "Look, Nick, this is not smart. You'll have my blood on the carpet and fingerprints everywhere, and you checked into the room and used your name." "My name is on the room," Bob quipped. "Not good, Bob. Nick is setting you up." I could see the 20-watt bulb pop in Nick's head. Alex roared, "I'm gonna kill you, kid!" And Bob stepped forward, delivering a crushing overhand right to Alex's temple. And when Alex hit the floor, the black revolver bounced out of his hand. Nick was thoughtful for a few seconds, and then flicked his face towards the door, indicating that I should leave. And I did. Bob and I were quiet on the ride, and he sighed. "I guess this is goodbye. Do you think we're all going to prison?" "We shall see," I said. "Did Aunt Rachel say anything about me?" "Yes. Aunt Rachel said you were going to be okay, and that I'd give you these pictures." We had a moment of reflection on our future, and Bob said, "Good luck, kid." I worked for Harvey for a year, remained sober, and missed Chicago, so I moved back home. Harvey said that the key to sales was to find something everybody needed, which in his case was a coffin and planting on acre 42 of Park Lawn Cemetery. As I drove over the Chicago Skyway, I saw my city, and Harvey whispered in my ear, "Sell something that's in abundance." At that precise moment, I saw my future. It was a typical Chicago scene with perfectly straight streets and houses stretched across the city to a single point on the western horizon. The sun glowed on each window, radiating gold, and there were millions of windows in Chicago. And I decided then and there to go into the window business. I located a window company and applied for a sales position, and Harvey gave me a glowing reference. I got the job, and in time, I realized I could own my own company. Still, with an indictment looming, I knew a good employer reference and attending meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous would be critical in avoiding a prison sentence. Then the day came, and while driving, I heard on the radio that a grand jury had indicted me and almost went off the road.
Nick Shore has been arrested in Detroit.
At 6 a.m. the following morning, an FBI agent knocked on the door, and after reading my rights, he asked if I had a plan for handling my situation.
Do you have a lawyer?
Yes,
What's his name?
William J. Martin.
The Richard Speck serial killer prosecutor? He's your lawyer?
Yes, I replied,